All right, happy to be joined by Major General Patrick Ryder, of course, the Pentagon Press Secretary. General, always good to have you, and thank you for taking the time.
Hey, thanks very much, Neil. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Same here. General, did Defense Secretary Austin carry out this strike? Did he command the strike, obviously with the president's knowledge, but what did it start from, presumably his hospital bed?
So Secretary Austin was actively engaged in overseeing and directing the strikes that we saw last night in Yemen. On Tuesday, when the Houthis were conducting their complex attack in the southern Red Sea, Secretary Austin was engaged in a call with the chairman and the CENTCOM commander to review in real time the Houthi attack, and then subsequently had two conversations with the president, multiple conversations with the National Security Council, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the CENTCOM commander over the next couple of days as they reviewed response options. And then once the president gave authority, it was Secretary Austin who gave the command yesterday to conduct those strikes. Last night, he monitored the strikes from his hospital room with access to a full communications suite of secure comms, monitored it again in real time, and then after the strike spoke with the National Security Council, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the Central Command commander to do post-strike assessment. Continues to monitor the situation today and stays actively engaged on all DoD activities worldwide.
But he himself launched this attack, and from that hospital room. He must have a lot of equipment and the like in that room.
He has a full suite of secure communications. He is conducting his full duties from Walter Reed. Of course, he is in good condition. He's recovering well. He's in good spirits. Certainly looks forward to getting out of the hospital as soon as he can while he recuperates. But he is not missing a beat.
So, General, I take it from the president allowing him to do this and giving him the power to do this, the president stands by him. He has no intention of removing him?
Well, I'm not going to speak for the president. I think his words speak for themselves. Secretary Austin remains focused on doing the DoD mission and making sure that our nation remains safe.
I'm sorry, the president's word didn't seem obvious to me, General, so excuse my ignorance, but it sounds like by letting him, conduct these strikes and follow up how the strikes were going with the facilities set up in his hospital room, that the president is indeed trusting him enough not only to carry it off, but to keep doing it.
I think the president and the White House have made clear that they continue to have the trust and confidence in Secretary Austin. And again, he remains focused on executing his duties as the Secretary of Defense and safeguarding our nation.
Were you aware, General, about his condition?
Neil, I first became aware of the Secretary's condition on the day after New Year's Day. I've talked about this with our press corps here. I didn't feel that I was at liberty to divulge that information. Okay. And certainly, we made that notification on Friday. We recognize that we can do better when it comes to transparency. We are committed to the DoD principles of information, which is to ensure that timely, accurate information about DoD operations is getting out to the public. And as you know, we are conducting a review to look at process, timeline, notifications. And so, and the last thing I'd say on this is Secretary Austin took full responsibility in a public statement in terms of his requirements and responsibility to let folks know about his medical condition. So we've learned a lot from this experience. We're not making any excuses. We're very focused on making sure the nation remains safe, and that's what we'll continue to do going forward.
Some Republican critics who want the general to step down have pointed out that this whole Houthi attack line might have been a deflection. We should say the vast majority with whom I've been chatting supported the move. In fact, if there was any criticism of why it took so long to act as you did. But what do you make of those who think that this was all part of a subterfuge here?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Look, I'm a military officer. I'm apolitical. We're focused on operational requirements and getting the job done. And the fact is, since November 19th, the Houthis have conducted 27, now today 28 missile attacks against international maritime shipping and putting the lives of innocent mariners at risk. And so last night, what you saw was a multinational effort involving the United States, the UK, Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands to send a very loud and clear message to the Houthis that these kinds of illegal, reckless, and dangerous attacks will not be tolerated going forward.
General, the countries that you mentioned there, were those the only ones you asked to participate, not you specifically, sir, but the administration? Were there others who turned down the opportunity?
So, Neil, I'm not going to get into the behind-the-scenes diplomatic discussions. The fact is this was a multinational strike involving U.S. and U.K. aircraft with the support from the countries I've highlighted. I'd also highlight that in addition to that effort, there is an international coalition with more than 20 countries right now supporting Operation Prosperity Guardian, which is a defensive coalition focused on helping to safeguard international shipping and mariners transiting the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden region. So, as we made very clear, this is not a U.S. problem. This is an international problem that requires an international solution. And so we're going to continue to work very closely with allies and partners around the world. It's the American way of doing things, and it's the American way of getting things done. And so, we're going to continue to do what we need to do to ensure regional security and stability going forward.
Now, the Houthis, obviously, Houthis, I should say, sir, are indicating that they're not done, that this was an egregious cross over the line. There was a follow-up attack today. I know it didn't go anywhere, but the more attacks promised. Iran has expressed outrage at this. What's next?
Yeah, well, certainly our goal here is to restore security and stability in this vital international waterway that 10 to 15% of global commerce transits. So that's what we're going to continue to remain focused on. Clearly, rhetoric coming out of the Middle East is not something new, and we'll have to wait and see exactly how the Houthis respond. As you highlight, one missile attack today. I don't know if that constitutes a massive retaliatory response. We would hope that the Houthis get the message loud and clear that it's not in their best interest to continue to conduct these kinds of attacks.
But it seems like you are open to follow-up attacks in Yemen. What made this distinct and unique, besides other responses, is that they never involved going into Yemen to do them or launching attacks in Yemen, that now is open to you, right?
It's not the first time we've conducted strikes in Yemen. Of course, if you go back to 2016,
right.
But in this particular case, as Secretary Austin made clear in his statement last night, we will continue to do what we need to do to protect our forces, protect the global economy, and make sure that this type of activity is not acceptable going forward.
General, while I still have you here, can you update us on this vessel that was seized, this tanker, by the Iranians in the Gulf of Oman and now sent back to Iranian waters? Where does that stand?
So to my knowledge, Iran continues to have this tanker, to hold this tanker. Of course, we condemn this act, this illegal act, and have called on them to release it. It's just another example of the kind of malign activity that we see Iran conducting in this region as they aim to disrupt security and stability. But again, look, there's many nations in this region of the world. We all know the vital, important economic aspects of this, as well as the security aspects of this region. So we're going to continue to consult closely with allies and partners to ensure that we can keep those waterways open and that, the world can continue to work together to resolve these issues.
General, I thought that was the last question. I must have lied. I didn't mean to. But if I can go back to General Austin, sir, the Secretary, is it your sense that he's going to be in the hospital for a while, but that in the hospital he will be continuing to conduct his business and, if necessary, follow-up attacks if they become necessary from that same hospital bed?
Yeah, so, in terms of his duties, the Secretary is executing his full duties with his full authorities right now. In terms of when he comes out of the hospital, I don't have an update to provide. Clearly, that will be something that's done in consultation with his doctors. And, it will make sure that he takes the time he needs to recover and recuperate. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, he's not missing a beat. He's very focused on doing his duties as the Secretary of Defense and defending our nation.
Major General Patrick Ryder. Thank you, General. Very good seeing you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.